At the top of the program, we showed you the details of the $2 trillion stimulus package that the Senate is expected to pass this evening. Now, it may go into tomorrow, but my first guest has a unique perspective on this, as he's elected to Congress during our last crisis, the financial crisis in '08, and he worked on Wall Street for Goldman Sachs before that. I want to bring in Congressman Jim Himes, a Democrat from Connecticut, serving on the Financial Services Committee. The devil's in the details, but from the macro perspective of what this legislation will do, will it help the right people, or are you concerned that there's not enough checks and balance in effect, that the people who need the most help won't be getting it?
We know that the bill is going to have very substantial relief for American families. And while I don't know that the income threshold is set exactly, most Americans, sort of, upper middle class and below, are likely to see substantial cash sent to them directly. It's going to have very substantial assistance for our small businesses in a combination of loans and grants. But you raise an interesting question. This got hung up a little bit because the Republican Senate bill had something that reminded me of sort of phase one of the proposed TARP bailout back in '08, which was a huge pot of money, really without any oversight as to how it would be dispersed and used. And you saw the president say, "I'll be the oversight." I don't think many of us want to trust him to do that. But when I last spoke with Speaker Pelosi, she told me that there was provisions in the bill now to make sure that there was a dedicated inspector general, and what I understand will be a 5-person board that will oversee that money that will be either lent out or given out in one form or another to our larger businesses.
I happened to see an appearance you had on a cable network yesterday before the president's briefing yesterday, and you echoed, I think for a lot of us, some of the surreal nature that we've gotten used to there, where there has to be, from the political side with the vice president or for Secretary Azar, almost the mandatory fealty they have to pay to the president before they could even say the status of things. And the medical professionals, and Fauci, unfortunately, for the second straight day, wasn't present. They try to do the cleanup and give the facts. Well, as bizarre as that was, last night the president said, hey, we got to get basically Americans back out there, and you know what, the economy can't suffer because of the concerns of the health. And while I'm paraphrasing, I think I'm being pretty fair to that point. He doubled down again today talking about Easter. Now, use your area. We have people watching across the country, but there's been an explosion in just a pocket of Westport. You have Norwalk Hospital, which is a major hospital that I know has major concerns, like so many ERs and ICU does, over shortages of equipment right now. You have cities like Bridgeport and Stamford and the rest that have populations that have had a lot of movement in between. The idea that in 2.5 weeks, you're going to have your residents being told to go out in the street and act like nothing happened, exposing your family, mine as well, to this, it's crazy. And I know that's a political term, but it really is nothing short of insane. The amount of people who asked me last night as this was going on, did I hear him right? I don't know what to say, but just tell me you at least agree that even by these standards, this is completely nuts.
Yeah, I think crazy is actually a psychological, not a political term, but I won't go there. Richard, of course, you know exactly what the president is doing. The president now sees the stock market below the level that it was when he was sworn in 3 years ago. The economy is going to be in some kind of very deep recession. So sort of the one thing he had to say to tell the American people, which is look at the market and look at the economy, that's gone. And so what is he left with? He's left with, sort of vaguely racist and bigoted appeals, like demanding that this be called the Chinese virus, talking about borders as though, borders are going to keep people on airplanes from transmitting this virus. So he's obviously angling around. And the problem with it, Richard, is that, it's not an either or thing. It's not like you can do the healthcare, solve the health issue and choose between doing the economy. You got to do the two things at the same time. And what I mean by that is if you open up the economy economy, if you get people out there, meeting in Starbucks and in business meetings and going through airports and train stations before you've really licked this virus, you're coming back around for a phase 2 that is going to make phase 1 look like a walk in the park. And you're absolutely right. Look, New York City, we're having a rough time up here in southwestern Connecticut. We've actually got we're sort of the epicenter here in Connecticut, and in the state we've had 10 fatalities, but we've got it easy relative to New York City, where you're just seeing thousands of new cases. If we go too early on this, there will be a massive amount of economic pain. So the right way to do this is listen to the scientists, get the coronavirus under control, get the number of tests out there that allow you to really isolate those people who have it, because people are going to have it going forward regardless of what we do, and then begin to open up the economy in an intelligent way. So it's not an either-or proposition, and if you think about it that way, the way the president is, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to take a very irresponsible action and people are going to die and the economy is going to suffer, or you're going to get run over because 15 days from now, the health situation is going to be worse, not better. And so you will have raised expectations in a way that people are going to say, wait a second, what about that 15-day thing? And that's not a position that the President of the United States should be in.
At the risk of sounding like a fanboy, Congressman, Governor Cuomo, and by the way, this goes for several of the Governor Newsom, Governor DeWine in Ohio, so this is not a party line thing. Governor Cuomo all but begged today to say, I asked for help and you sent me 400 ventilators. I need 30,000. Now, clearly, we understand that with the Defense Production Act, only the executive branch can go there. I get that. But the president turned around today and said, hey, you had a chance 5 years ago to do it. There is almost a tangible message of you're on your own if you're a governor right now. And it's your state's problem. And if I open this up in 3 weeks, if you want to keep your doors closed, you can. Beyond the illogic of this, he called himself a wartime president. Wartime presidents didn't leave it up to the Chamber of Commerce to decide what the companies wanted to do or not. And the inequity in terms of leadership right now, it is just so jarring. And I know we look at things in political terms, not yourself maybe, but the president, it is just so distressing that this is playing out in real time. We're here at the end of March, and we still haven't ordered a single company to produce a single thing, whether it be a mask or whether it be a ventilator, and it is beyond outrageous.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I've been sort of chuckling at the flip over of the messaging. He went from this is no big deal, it's going to go away faster, it's going to be a miracle, it's going to go away, to saying I'm a wartime president. Well, I think about those wartime presidents, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, wartime prime minister. I don't remember any one of them having as their philosophy, I take no responsibility and it's your fault. That is not a characteristic of a leader, much less a wartime president. But look, we know this president well. His entire career has been about finding an enemy and finding somebody else to blame for his failures. So, of course, the governors, provide somebody to beat up on because he can say, you're not doing enough. But look, the American people are not buying that. There are people still around who remember World War II, where our whole society, and not just our companies like Ford Motor Company and GM, but our neighborhood gardens, for God's sake, got taken up with growing fruits and vegetables for neighborhoods and for troops. We know what mobilization looks like. We know what a whole of country patriotic effort looks like. And we also recognize, and even the president's supporters, they have to recognize that what he's doing now is trying to shift blame, trying to make it sound like it's not his fault, and doing something we've never seen from a leader, which is, at the end of the day, no, I'm sorry, the buck does not stop with me. This is the man that 47% of Americans decided should be president, and because of our electoral college today is president. So we are where we are, and I don't hold out a lot of hope that all of a sudden Donald Trump is going to learn something about integrity, dignity, and the qualities of leadership. So in the absence of that, our governors, our mayors, our private sector is doing an extraordinary job. Democrats sometimes beat up on corporations and stuff, but as far as I know, Walmart, Google trying to get this website built, they're really trying to help, and it's time that the president step up and do likewise.
Congressman Himes, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
And up next, a man who will be voting on that $2 trillion stimulus bill. He'll join us to discuss what's in it and also what President Trump has been saying about opening up our country by Easter. Senator Bob Menendez next.